Hey, what's up? It's Comic 95, the Savior, and for this video, I will be doing a Rand's Japanese journal, and I kind of want to talk about something that I've put off for quite some time. Nobody's asked about this. This is a personal video that I wanted to make, as I always do with my journals. So I really wanted to talk about names, and specifically your name in a foreign country. So I'm going to be speaking from the unpopular opinion, the side that nobody agrees with, the side that nobody speaks on. And despite what some people might think, I'm not purposefully trying to be difficult, but rather I'm being myself, speaking from the heart and speaking from my own, personal experience, how I feel, what my thoughts are on this topic. So, excuse me, I just got through eating. And I'm looking crazy. I'm not wearing makeup or anything. I actually did just straighten my hair, though. Please bear with me. I'm in a transitioning phase. I have not relaxed my hair in quite some time. I have straightened my hair. I'm getting it ready for tomorrow because I have a really important day. Tomorrow, a really big meeting, and I'm going to wear extensions and everything. So anyway, this is not a beauty contest or a video where we're judging me on how I look, but rather I wanted to discuss a topic that I find comes up a lot as a foreigner, which is my name. So to give you some backstory before I talk about the point of this video and my stance, I want to talk about a popular meme, tweet, whatever you want to call it. I think I first actually saw this topic on Facebook, but I recently saw it on Twitter and it made me think again. So I've seen it phrased different ways, but I've seen both from a Chinese perspective as well as from a Black perspective, with people talking about, I think it was an Indian perspective too, people talking about making people choke on their name and how you shouldn't change your name to satisfy other people, to make things easier for them, and that they can learn how to pronounce your name. And again, maybe unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say how it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, as my subscribers say. I'm not going to make my stance different to try to make people happy. And this is hard for me to talk about as a Black woman because I feel naturally my own race feels like I'm attacking them. Hopefully some other Black people get where I'm coming at. I have really mixed feelings. I feel like there's several different sides to this. What is that on my nose? Okay. There's several different sides to this. So the way that I see it is, people should be called whatever they prefer to be called. I agree with that. But I also don't think that you are sacrificing anything, or that there's any shame in preferring to be called by a nickname or preferring to take on another name. What do they call it? Alias, however you say it. I forget the term for it. Forgetting English, you guys. Or shall I say I'm forgetting normal English. I spend all day talking to 5-year-olds. I speak baby English on a day-to-day basis. Or I speak dumbed down English when I'm communicating to somebody that English is not their first language and they're an adult. So anyway, yeah, like I feel like it should go based off of whatever your preference is, but at the same time, within reason. For example, let's be real. Normal people are not going to waste the time, effort, and or energy to try to figure out how to pronounce things in your language, especially if they're not living in your country, but you're living in theirs. And this is not to make like a superiority type thing, like where you're better than them because you're from XYZ country, but rather being realistic. For example, as an American, I think it's not realistic to expect, people from the US to be able to pronounce a Chinese name. Come on, you guys, let's be real. Same thing goes vice versa. I've been living in Japan now for nearly 5 years. And with that said, I don't expect Japanese people to be able to pronounce my name, even although the majority of my name is actually very easy to pronounce phonetically in Japanese. But, however, if I were to be realistic, it's never going to sound, how can I put it? Let me take back what I just said. It's easy to pronounce it in a way that I prefer it to be pronounced, but a Japanese person can never say my name the way that my mother, father, or any other American will do. In fact, I can take it a step further. Even Black people choke on my name because I'm not trying to make this I'm better than you or look at me type thing, but I do not have a quote unquote stereotypical name like how people expect my name to be. my name is completely white. And on top of that, when you hear my name, you would never in a gazillion years imagine that I'm going to be a young Black woman at that. So with that said, yeah, and if you're nosy and you want to know what my real name is, just go to my Facebook page. But yeah, so I understand in one sense that if you know somebody out of respect, it doesn't take much to learn how to properly pronounce their name. I'm someone that normally wants to know how to pronounce their name just for my own knowledge. I prefer to call people what their preferred name is. And plus, it's a learning experience for me. I think back to now something that I find to be a little bit ignorant on my behalf. But I think back to my early days of being in college when I was 18 and 19 years old. And I had friends that, were going to school in Chicago that were Korean. And I also had a guy that I had met at a hostel in New York that was Korean. And even although he had his, fake, American name, I wanted to know what his Korean name was. And of course, the excuse given then, just like how I do now, is, oh, my Korean name is hard to say. I prefer to be called this. But for me, it was like, no, I'm a weeboo, or however you want to call it, Korea boo. What do you all call it? Japan doesn't start with we or W, so why do we call it weeboo? Okay, but anyway. You get my point. For me, it was like, no, I want to call you by your real name. Now, looking back on it after having been in Japan, that was kind of ignorant and insulting on my behalf, maybe, depending on how that guy took it. But to me, I meant it in a completely innocent way. I just wanted to learn some Korean. I wanted to be able to speak properly. I wanted to address him how his name is supposed to be said. But anyway, that was coming from a place of ignorance back then at that time. And if that guy happens to come across my video, those guys, I apologize and I'm sorry if I offended you or singled you out, which they're never going to see this video. But back on subject, yeah, I think I have mixed feelings to us. There's some give and take with that. It depends on what your name is. There are a lot of Chinese names, even although I've been in Japan for a while, I've met tons of Chinese people, I still get mixed up on how do you pronounce certain sounds, letters, whatever in Chinese. And it wouldn't be a matter of me being ignorant or rude or offensive, and same thing goes for Japanese names. It's just a matter of not knowing. Now, of course, I live in Japan, so I've become accustomed to Japanese names. When I see them, I instantly know how to pronounce them because I'm familiar with their phonetic alphabet, hiragana, katakana. I understand. I even know some kanji. So when I see some names even written in kanji, I know what that first or what that last name is because I've seen it a gazillion times from having taught hundreds, if not thousands of students. So I know this. But I think it's unrealistic for you to come to my country in America and expect people that have never spent a day studying Japanese, never spent a day studying Chinese, don't have Chinese friends, don't have Japanese friends. Why would you expect them to know how to pronounce your name? Why would you expect them to be experts on your name? And what thrill, what fun do you get out of refusing to use a nickname, refusing to use an alias, whatever, fake name, to make things easy for people to call you by it? I'll use myself for an example. My last name is Bolin. If you are not German, you've probably never seen that last name before. You don't know how to pronounce it. And as an American, even although my name has had the spelling theoretically changed and the pronunciation has been changed to make it less chokeable to both Black and white Americans, because I don't even say my name correctly. When I talk to my German friends, they correct me on how to say my own name. I don't even say my own last name properly. I had a German friend here in Japan that I actually asked to teach me how to say my own last name. And she was laughing at how I was saying it. She's like, oh, that's close enough. I can understand. So with that said, that was a very common thing that we did in the US. And the US isn't alone. Most people did change their names to make it easier to be pronounced. Japanese people do the exact same thing. So they do it in two different ways. When they write their name in English, in order for it to be pronounced properly, they commonly take away letters in order for people to say it correctly. For example, I can use, my boyfriend, Sho. His name is Shogo. If he writes his name in English, he spells it S-H-O-G-O instead of S-H-O-U-G-O. Why? Because when you add that U, the name, it changes. It becomes either overstressed or it makes a completely different sound. So in order to keep his name being said as close to the Japanese version as possible, he drops the U in order to make it sound more Japanese. He's not alone. People that have names like Yuki or Yusuke, etc., they will normally just spell their name with one U instead of two. Every once in a while, you'll meet somebody that chooses to do the double U because they can't stand it when an American or English speaker doesn't pronounce the oogie, as far stressed out as they want it to be. It doesn't sound right to them. Well, once again, it's stupid to have that mindset because as an American, we don't care about that. To us, it all sounds the same. It's the same name, same pronunciation. And if you don't like how it's being said, you have the right to add other letters, to use a nickname, whatever else you want to do to make it easier on yourself. So, in my opinion, I feel like it's a stupid argument to be made to, excuse my notification, my computer, to, make a fight or make a problem out of nothing, basically, because it doesn't come out of a place of making people feel inferior or, making them feel bad for not blending in, fitting in with everybody else. It's just the way that the world works. It's harder for most people to say names like that. I've studied languages for a while. I've been learning Spanish since I was 8 years old. I stopped, obviously, because I started focusing on Japanese. But for myself, I don't find it difficult to do things like pronounce the Spanish R because I started when I was a child. But if you go to somebody like my mother, for example, or the average American, trying to pronounce the R sound, that rolled R in Spanish, is really difficult. Am I an expert or a pro? No, but I can do it much better than the average person. But with that said, okay, I cannot expect the average American to be able to properly pronounce a Spanish name, Hispanic name, whatever you want to call it, a Spanish name, I'll say. Excuse me for being offensive. I'm not bothering to go through all that crap. Y'all get what I mean. It's difficult for most people because their alphabet is different than ours. Well, I don't see why that's so difficult to understand for most people. And for lack of a better word, let me say this is nice. The nicest way I could possibly think of, especially for minorities that don't have traditional names. I think it's even more ridiculous to expect people to know how to say your name. And I know that people give the example of, white people having, these crazy names or whatever. But the thing about it is that it's not that the name itself is easy to pronounce. It's that you've been taught how to pronounce it because lots of other people have that last name. So it's not a matter of, if you could say this complicated white last name, you should be able to say my, black last name, or in most cases, first name, my black first name, because most black people actually have white last names, and they're normally very simple slave names like Smith, Johnson, Brown, Black, things like that. I'm the unicorn in the bunch, so to speak. Anywhere I go, even with white people, nobody has seen my last name before. So with that said, normally for Black people, it's your first name that people struggle with. And again, I have mixed feelings. One part of me is like, okay, I do agree that it's a little bit disrespectful to have somebody directly say, well, you need to come up with a nickname, or for someone to give you a nickname, it can be. But I think it's also equally as ignorant and rude and full of it for you to be someone that has a complex name or a hard to pronounce name, or a name that other people deem as being hard to pronounce, and you, one, refuse to, give people a nickname to call you. 2, get mad when people use a nickname to refer to you. Or 3, get mad when people mess up your name. I have a very basic old white lady name, and people always mess up my name, even Black people, because they assume there's no way this young under 30 thing has a, an old fashioned name like that. She must, it must be pronounced this way. So I get that a lot. And yeah, I do kind of want to get mad sometimes. Like, are you an idiot? Did you not go to school? How do you not know how to say my name? Then I deal with the fact that when I deal with English speakers from different countries, they also mispronounce my name. My name is not said the same way in American English as it is in British English or in Australian English. So I'm constantly having to correct Jamaicans and British people and Australians, etc. But you want to know what? Fine, I'm used to it. And what I normally do, if my name is constantly being mispronounced, I just give them a nickname to call me. I'm actually not a big fan of nicknames, and I adopted it since I came to Japan because I got tired of people butchering my name. So, and plus it's easier, shorter to write, more fun, and you don't need to know my business anyways, how I see it. So, I don't know. I have really mixed feelings towards that. But my point of this video wasn't that, but rather to kind of flip it and talk about something else. So my thing was, I get that people I can kind of understand people find it offensive or insulting when people refuse to pronounce your name properly, refuse to learn your name, so to speak, if they're close to you, or even those that aren't so close. Fine. I don't really agree, but I understand what you're saying. But the part that I find more problematic is, as someone who's been in Japan, like I said, for almost 5 years, I find it more insulting when I give somebody the name, my preferred name, and they choose to call me by my legal name, the way that they think it should be pronounced. That's a lot more offensive to me. There's two issues with that. For starts, you don't know my reason why I prefer using a nickname, for starts. Secondly, you're somewhat othering the person by insisting on calling them by whatever foreign name they had to make sure they understand you are not one of us. And three, you're canceling out the reason why they probably gave you that nickname, which is probably because you're butchering their native name. I cannot tell you how many times I've told a Japanese person what my preferred name is, and instead of them calling me by my preferred name, which is Ren, instead they insist on calling me by my legal name and then butcher my legal name because that's not how I say my name. And they insist, I know how to pronounce it. I can speak English. And it's like, I didn't ask you if you thought you could speak English. I didn't ask you that. I told you what my name is. I told you what I want to be called. And that's that. And for anyone that doesn't understand this, let me put this into another perspective for you. Imagine in the US, and I know this has happened before, but that's why I said we're going to change the script, put it in a different perspective. Imagine in the US, you have a Chinese friend, and her name is Sally. Whose name is Sally? Nobody. But can you find an Asian person with that name? Very easily. They commonly have old names, and it's because their parents, in most circumstances, didn't know any better, wanted to give them a white name to help them assimilate, blend in. Okay, and they also realized that their native name would be choked on if they gave their Chinese or Korean baby a normal Korean Chinese name. So instead, you end up with people with names like Eugene and Jim and John and Michael and, basic names like that. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but just saying that it typically sounds like a fake name to a lot of Black and or white people. And so these people have probably been asked the same question. What's your real name? Where are you really from? Okay, but let's say that either A, you are from the US, or B, number two, you've chosen to make this your home. Does it feel good to have people constantly say that to you? Why does it matter? This is what I'm known as, this is what I want to be called. So out of respect, call me that. What's so hard about that? I didn't ask if you could speak Korean or Chinese. I didn't ask if you were married to a Chinese person, if your best friend is Korean, if you're studying Korean. No, I told you what my name was. Just call me that. That's simple. It would be seen as offensive for you to insist on calling your friend whose name is Sally, Shai-Ting, or whatever her real name is. Even if you're saying it perfectly. She didn't ask to be called that. It's rude. So that's something that I find to be really bothersome. And to take it a step further, when I do legal stuff or when I, talk to somebody that I'm close to, normally this is for legal matters. I normally share my real name with them because I want them to know who I really am. But that's not the issue. The issue that I have is when people know what my legal name is, and instead of spelling my name how I asked for it to be spelled based on the pronunciation that I use for my own name that I've had for nearly 30 years, instead of writing my name the way that I write it, instead of saying my name the way that I say it, when Japanese people have the audacity to correct me under the assumption that, oh, she must have misspelled her name. She must have confused these katakana characters. She must be saying it wrong. I know what my name is. I know what my name sounds like. I'm American. I'm a native English speaker. I'm a teacher. I'm not an idiot. English is not Japanese, and it doesn't follow phonics or the phonetic system when it comes to names in most circumstances. I can give a whole list of names, including my own, that if you were to try to sound them out phonetically, it makes zero sense whatsoever. In fact, I would argue that almost, if not all, of the most common American names, possibly the first 100 or 200 names, do not follow the phonetic system at all. We know how to say these names because we've heard them so many times. We've read them so many times. It's been drilled and trained, into our brains. There's no Japanese equivalent of that. In fact, the closest we can get to that is how Japanese particles go. For example, wa is spelled ha for zero reason, makes no sense. But mentally, every time that you see ha, if it's coming after something like, a name, it's a particle marker. So we know that we say wa. Being wa. Simple. You realize it. It's a pattern. You do it over and over and over again. You get used to it. Okay. English is the same way. Sally is not really spelled Sally. Brian is not really spelled or pronounced Brian, I should say, or pronounced Sally if you were to sound it out properly. We just see these names over and over and over again. We've been taught how to say them. So I can make, a 6-hour video on that, but I just wanted to comment on that. I feel like it's a stupid argument to be had. There's nothing wrong with people preferring to call you a nickname when you're living in their country, and at least they're being honest. Would you rather have somebody completely annihilate and butcher your name each time, or just give them a nickname that makes it easy for them? To me, somebody that has so much pride and is so cocky that they insist on being called a difficult name and insist on trying to teach you a lesson by making you call them by their hard name, you just sound like you have control issues or something. I don't see that as being empowering or whatever it's supposed to be. And I say this as a Black woman myself. It's one thing to try to teach somebody how to say your name, but if somebody is clearly struggling with your name, somebody clearly has issues with, take it up with your mama and your daddy for giving you that name. I don't see how or why you can get mad at people for struggling to pronounce your name. And again, the argument being made that I kept seeing is, they have these hard names in English. Look at all of these, difficult European names, whatever. But again, it's consistent. We see these names over and over and over again. It's very common for minorities, other races of people, to have names that other people have never seen, including other Black people. And then to make it worse, it's not like, people are normally patient with you. People get really frustrated and they get angry if you don't say their name correctly. Sorry, but most of us don't take a class that teaches you how to pronounce people's names. Phonics only does so much for you. And normally the reason why your name gets butchered is people try to go based on two things. One, memory of previous names that are spelled similarly, or two, they simply use phonics to try to sound it out. That should be understandable. But yeah, I just find it, I don't know. I find it to be really weird. I think it's stupid to try to force foreign people to pronounce your foreign name. That's dumb. And two, I think it's equally stupid to refuse as a foreigner to either one, use a nickname, or two, to adopt a new spelling for your name. I have a tweet that I had. I'm not trying to, dox this girl or whatever, but for anybody that follows me on Twitter, it's the tweet that I have pinned at the top. It's not my most liked tweet. I don't have a lot of followers to begin with. I just recently started using Twitter actively within the past year or so. And I don't heavily advertise my social media to begin with. But anyway, yeah, it's not my most viral tweet, so to speak, but it was one that I really liked, in which I talked about how you shouldn't let random Japanese people basically dictate how you spell your name. There are no set rules for katakana. Katakana is not like how it goes in English. You can literally use any letters that you want to that resemble the pronunciation of your name. And with that said, like I said, there are no straightforward, strict rules as far as that goes. A lot of people have their name being butchered because they have decided to just spell their name however their Japanese teacher told them to spell it, or however their boyfriend or their friend or the bank decided to write it for them. And that used to be me until I realized I don't like the way people are saying my name. I want it to be spelled in a way, phonetically, that sounds closest to my name. And so there was this one white girl that commented back and was telling me how, I think she was German too, and was talking about how her name can't be pronounced properly in Japanese. And it's like, see, that's where you're taking it too far. And that reminds me of, the start of this conversation, this video, with people saying that people can't say their name right and making them choke on it, so to speak. And it's like, that's taking it too far. My expectation is not for Japanese people to be able to 100% sound exactly like an American, or not even just like an American, because Americans butcher my name too, but to sound like my mom and dad when they say my name. I don't expect that. I just want you to say my name phonetically within your own language in Japanese, the way that I say my name. That's a reasonable request. I'm not asking you to sound like a native speaker, because you cannot possibly say an English R. I understand that, unless you studied English or have interest in it. You're not going to be able to make that sound. Fair enough. No argument there. I'm not offended by that. But because you cannot make that sound, I want to spell my name as close as possible phonetically, where to my ears, it closely resembles what it would sound like in English. That's reasonable. In this girl's case, you're claiming that you can't get that sound because you want that exact German pronunciation. And I have a German last name, so I'm right there with you, girl. But with that said, I'm not going to bring my German or American expectations for my name over to Japan. But what I can do is translate my English name to as close as I can get it in Japanese. And now you have no excuse because you can speak Japanese. You can pronounce katakana phonetically. It's a different combination than what you're used to. But now, if you butcher my name, you're choosing to do it. You've decided, I've never seen your name spelled this way, so I'm going to spell your name the way that makes me most comfortable, the way that I prefer to say your name. Because this is how you spell your name. So this is how it should look in katakana. But katakana doesn't work that way. Katakana is based on sounds, not based on English spelling. There are plenty of examples of this, where you have words and names that lose and or gain letters based on what they believe the Japanese pronunciation and Japanese sound is closest to. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I can't tell you how many times I've looked up stuff to see how do you say it in Japanese. And I'm like, why did they drop these letters or use this katakana, character instead of this one when they have these letters in Japanese too? But that's the way that Japanese ears sound. That's the way that they hear it. They hear it better this way. Okay, well, I'm doing the same thing. This is my name. I can choose how I say my own name. I'm the native speaker. I'm the American. I know how to say my own name. You don't. So when someone else does that, that's actually a lot more offensive to me, for you to not only not be able to say my name, but for you to insist on telling me how to say it by you choosing the spelling for it, by you correcting me. It's one thing to tell me, oh, I noticed that you spell your name with these letters, but you're using these characters in katakana. Was it a mistake? That's different. It's totally different for you to go ahead and make the changes for me on my behalf, or to insist on calling me otherwise. I've actually worked at a company before, one of my first jobs, and the staff, they were really good English speakers, especially one of the chicks that were training me in particular. And she insisted on calling me by my legal name and would constantly pretend to have forgotten that I didn't want to be called that. And so it was like she'd make a point to call me by my American name. And as she even said, she could speak English and talked about studying abroad, etc. And I'm like, I understand that this is a free English opportunity for you. And they like that it mystifies you and makes, there's a foreign teacher, whatever. They like that. But it's not my preference. It's insulting for me to have to constantly hear people mispronounce my name. It's one thing for it to be mispronounced because it's being put in Japanese. It's another thing for you to mispronounce my American English name because you insist on calling me the incorrect name. Because that's not what my name sounds like at all. That's what it sounds like to you. That's how you think it's supposed to be said. So I literally got to the point where I pulled up my name on Google Translate in English and I let them listen. This is how you say my name in English. And then they were all looking stupid. And so the part that really kills me is it shouldn't take me using the internet or using Google, using anything else. Just call people what they want to be called, if it's within reason. If your name is difficult, don't make it a game with people. Let people call you a nickname. As long as it's something that you're okay with, choose your nickname. Like I said, I didn't use nicknames before I came to Japan. That wasn't my thing. I always felt weird about using a nickname. Like I feel like it's taking away from you as a person. I always wanted to be where when somebody says my name, people instantly know it's me and me alone. And that's one thing that I always liked about having my old white lady name, as they say, because I know if I hear my name, you're only talking about me. There's no other young black girl with my name. You're definitely talking about me, or at least within that, vicinity in that area. And so being in Japan, I felt like kind of weird losing that. But at the same time, when I would date people or work with people, even if they weren't Japanese, like my, last real job was with Turkish people, my boss, I didn't even ask to be called by my nickname. I gave him my legal name, but he went around telling the staff, to call me Ren. So I just went along with it. It's hard for them to say. Is it hard for everyone? No. But for a lot of people, yes. It's also difficult to remember. My fiance, for example, same situation. He personally prefers to call me by my legal name. His family doesn't. It's too hard for them to say. It's hard for them to remember. So they prefer to call me Ren. That's okay with me. I don't mind. I'm not going to get mad at people because they can't say my name. I'm not going to sit there for 20 minutes and try to school people on how to pronounce my name. I understand. I'm in a foreign country. That's reasonable. It's understandable. But I'm also not going to get mad at people for preferring to use a nickname with me, for asking me for a nickname. So pick and choose your battles, fight wisely. Like don't make a big deal out of dumb things, if you ask me. And this kind of goes back into my video that I made. I don't know which one you guys are going to get first because that one hasn't been uploaded at this time of recording this video. But I did a video talking about people, making a big deal about like headscarves and earrings and hairstyles, etc. And that's a much more touchier topic, which that one's a lot more debatable. But similar to that, I mean, within reason, and I say this as a Black girl myself, I totally, excuse me, sorry, my head itches. I totally understand, real like cultural things. Like for example, if my hair were to be curly right now and my boss were to say, we don't allow curly hair, your hair has to be straight. That's different. I cannot change the way that my hair is. If my boss says, you are way too dark, girl, you got to bleach your skin if you want to work for us, that's different. I totally understand that being a problem. But what's not understandable, or shall I say what is understandable, and what I would have to disagree with, is an employer saying that I cannot wear an afro to work, that they want me to pull my hair back into a ponytail like everybody else. That's not somebody being racist or making differences because I'm Black. An employer is saying that you can't wear braids. That's a really touchy topic. I personally don't know, but once again, if the dress code is people have to wear their hair back in a ponytail, I kind of think that's okay too. Now, the argument becomes different if your hair is braided but back in a ponytail, but again, that's complicated. And even as a Black person, come on, guys, like there's more hairstyles than just braids for Black people. You do not have to wear braids to be Black. It's not hurtful to us. It is a cultural, ethnic hairstyle, whatever, but I don't see it as being that touchy of a topic, so to speak, unless, this rule is only being applied to you as the only Black employee or something. But I can go on forever making a whole video ranting about that. Y'all gonna hate me for it, but I'm giving my own honest 2 cents. I don't 100% know my stance on that part. That's a little more difficult, but that's not what this video is about. We're talking about names. So if your name is hard to pronounce, be reasonable. Find a nickname, give yourself a new name, alias, whatever, that makes it easy for people to pronounce it. Otherwise, don't get mad when people butcher it. If you don't mind people messing up your name and you'll respond to anything, then hey, that's fine too. My boss, for example, at my last job, once again, not the main boss, but the other boss, he was Turkish. I still can't say his name to this day. And it was spelled with English letters, but the pronunciation was different. So what did he do? He allowed me to completely butcher his name every time I would talk to him. And he was okay with that. And he never corrected me. He knew when I said that I was talking to him. So he tried to teach me. I tried to learn. I just couldn't get it down. Was I being ignorant, lazy, disrespectful? No, it just really was hard for me. And likewise, a lot of people feel the same way, towards me about my name. A lot of people hear my name and it's hard to pronounce. For me, it's like, how is my name hard to pronounce? It's common, it's basic, it's simple. All of these letters exist in Japanese, but they just can't do it. And then when people learn how to pronounce my name, they mentally see the letters of how it's spelled in English, and they're like, oh, no. In Katakana, it's spelled this way. And then I'm like, no. It's pronounced this way in Katakana, though. So I'm spelling, hit my computer. So I'm spelling it this way. And that just like completely, mind blows people. They don't understand it. So I'm done with this rant. Tell me your thoughts. Do you find it offensive if people ask for a nickname, or if you prefer to call you a nickname? Do you feel like it's taken away from you, even if you're in a foreign country? If people are using a different name than your legal native name, whatever, against your will, so to speak? I hear the argument on both sides, but I just have to disagree. I have to disagree. And this coming from a Black girl that's been in Japan for years, and I swear it's not just because I don't have that kind of name. I spent my whole life feeling like I had, as they stereotypically say, a ghetto name, so to speak, because my name is so rare within the Black community nowadays. And my last name has always been, even amongst white people, nobody knows my last name, so it's commonly mispronounced. And normally people are actually better off pronouncing my last name than they are my first name. And then in Japanese, for my middle name, part of my name you can't even write in Japanese. So it has to take on a brand new letter. And that's the part that gets me. My middle name, you can't spell that middle name phonetically in Japanese. It requires you to use characters in Japanese that I don't use in English. So it's funny how they understand that in order to get that same sound, they have to make up different letters to create my name in Japanese. But if I do that with my first name, where all of those letters do translate in Japanese, then they have to scratch their head. Why is she spelling her name this way? But they don't scratch their head about, why is she writing her name this way for her middle name? They understand, oh, okay, this sound pairing does not exist in Japanese. Individually, technically those letters do exist, but that sound combined, you cannot make it in Japanese. You can make a similar sound. So they use the closest katakana, phonetic character that results in a similar sound. That's all I want you to do. You can use your alphabet, use your letters, but say it how I say it. Why is that so difficult? So let me know your thoughts. What do you think? Like I said, I feel like people are, trying to be unicorns, making a fight, making a battle that shouldn't and doesn't really exist. Again, if your name is hard, complicated, different, foreign, whatever, it should kind of be expected that you're going to use a nickname, or that you're going to let other people give you one. I don't see it as being something to get angry over or to school people on. I don't see it as being disrespectful if people can't pronounce your name and ask for a nickname or make a nickname for you in a way. I do think it's insulting if people refuse to call you by a nickname after you've asked for one. And I can even argue that it's insulting for people to give you a nickname if you absolutely say look, I don't want a nickname, call me by my real name. But if them calling you by your real name results in it being butchered, that makes you upset too. Then it's like, pick your poison. Do you want them to butcher your name by trying to say it as best as they can? Or do you want a nickname? Which one is it? You can't expect people to waste their time and spend, an hour a day trying to learn how to pronounce your name. I had the same boss for a year, and I was never even after I was done working there, now it's been nearly 2 years, I still can't say his name properly. It's not because I was ignorant, rude, thought I was better. I just can't. It's too hard. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like, leave a comment, tell me your thoughts. And yeah, let's talk. As always, you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Comic95. I have a Snapchat, Comic the Savior, and you can also like my Facebook page as well. The links for everything are down in the description. Thank you for watching.